Hello, welcome. So today we are here to talk about the books that I read in April. So I have attempted to organize them in some kind of sensical fashion, so we will actually start with arcs. I ventured into the NetGalley world in April, dipped my little toe in, and I must say, the water is nice. I did not expect to get any approved for any arcs, but I started reading digitally a lot more in the past couple months, and so I decided, why not? And surprisingly, I actually was approved for a bunch. It was a bit of a mixed blessing because now I have to read them to keep my stats up. So I don't know how I feel about this decision that I made, but it was a really good time. So the first one I'll talk about, I'm not sure why they re-released this for arcs, and I'm not really sure why I requested it, but the first one that I read was Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. This has been out for years. People have already been reading it. I could have gotten it from the library or anything, but it was a good reason to pick it up. I believe it was previously published by an independent publisher in the UK, but HarperCollins US, I think, has picked it up. And so, as far as I could tell, they didn't change anything. Like, I got the ebook from the library and compared it to the arc that I had, and I didn't see any changes, but obviously I did not go through it with a fine-tooth comb. But regardless, Boy Parts. This was a very, very interesting book. It is pretty short, and it tells the story of a young woman who lives in the north of England, and she is a photographer, and she takes kind of domination photos of men. I don't want to go into too much detail and get myself flagged for anything, but she is very much one of these kind of unlikable female characters that have kind of been sort of common in literary fiction lately, very much like My Year of Rest and Relaxation main character. There have been quite a few of these going around. And so she is one of the most problematic ones that I have read. And so that comes along with a lot of factors that make the book complicated to read, to talk about. But I do think that it has something very interesting to say about how we view women, how we view art made by women, how we think about the actions of women and how kind of agency is removed from them in some ways. And actually sometimes how agency just actually is removed from women entirely. And yeah, I thought that the character development, both of the main character and particularly one side character, was masterful, very, very well done. I do think that the plot could have been stronger in order to kind of develop some of these ideas a little bit more. It felt a little bit forgettable in some ways. Ultimately, I questioned how much it would stick with me, and now, kind of a month later, I question it even more. Your mileage may vary. I don't think that it's something that I would say to just write off, but I also wouldn't say, oh wow, this is unbelievable, groundbreaking, you have to read it. Was it worth the read for me? Yes. Do I think it's going to be an all-time favorite? No. The next arc was Small Worlds by Caleb Azumah Nelson, and I was just over the moon thrilled that I was approved for this arc. And it's actually perfect that I'm making this video a little bit late because this is publication week. I read Open Water by Caleb Azumah Nelson last year, I think, and absolutely loved it. One of the most beautiful, most craftful books that I have ever read. His writing is simply unlike anything I've ever read before, and that remained true for this book. So Small Worlds is the story of, again, a young man who we kind of meet as a teenager, and you follow him through kind of 3 different seasons they're not far apart. I think it's 3 summers. You're following him just kind of navigating his kind of first love relationship kind of thing, his family life, his career, deciding, you know, what to do with his life, and truly just incredible. I had kind of forgotten that I had the same experience with Open Water, where the beginning of the book, like, it's beautiful, the emotion and the writing and the art of it is beautiful, but it feels very slow. And so, you know, I don't want to say pushed through it, but like, it took a while to really hook me, and I, again, had forgotten that exactly the same thing happened with Open Water. The second half is stronger, in my opinion, and it's possible that the first half was kind of required as groundwork to build up to that, but I loved the second half of this book even more than Open Water. I think it is more focused on family and less on kind of the relationship, and I just found it so compelling. The way that he depicts the way that people feel, the community, you know, I've never been in any community like, you know, the community of people from Ghana in London. Like, that is not an experience that I even could pretend to understand, but I felt like I could feel it through his writing, and like, you can just feel like the sun on your face in the summer from his writing, and his family relationships and discussions. Just truly incredible. Another very heavy read. He is discussing kind of by proxy the murder of a Black man in London that happened, I believe, like decades before this, but incredible. Absolutely pick it up. Pick up both Open Water and Small Worlds. I do not think you will regret it, no matter what. I really hope that Caleb Zuma Nelson continues writing, and I would love to see him take on something with more plot. I just would love to see how his writing would, you know, handle that, and how much even more he could like hook you and immerse you. Oh man. The third arc does not come out for quite a while. I'll put the date up here, but it is called The Center. I did not write down the author's name. That was silly. But this was such an interesting book. So a friend on Instagram, Quinn, hello, sent me the basically like synopsis of this, a TikTok about this or something. And so I went to look at it on NetGalley, and it was actually like an auto approved, like a open to anyone to read. And oh my goodness, this was a book seeming like it was like written for me to be interested in. So you are following this woman who discovers that there is this center where they can basically make you fluent in a language in like, I don't know, 10 days or something YouTube clickbaity. Yeah, so that's the premise. And so she goes to this place. It's very difficult to talk about this book without giving too much away, but the beginning, like the first half or so, the process of her finding out about this, the time of her going, I was invested, but I don't know how much of that is just because I am fascinated by languages, by the process of learning languages, obviously, and just the idea of learning a language that quickly, you know, the process of doing that, of like a language being assimilated into your brain, just so interesting to me. But then, you know, as the story develops, obviously it gets more complicated. Lots of discussion of kind of the idea of taking on an identity with a language. Not so much like, I've heard people talk about feeling like they have a different personality in different languages and stuff. You know, I am not yet fluent in other languages, but that is not something that I have experienced so far learning other languages. But I do find the concept of a language's history and a language's culture impacting you, and how you can't isolate it from that, you know, like you are taking on that perspective when you're taking on that language. Like, languages don't exist in a vacuum, and I found that extremely interesting. This main character is Pakistani, living in the UK, and so there is a lot of discussion of, you know, racism, classism, colonization, and the partition and all of that. So lots of different things going on in this book, and I really, really, really enjoyed reading it so much. I did feel like there was a little bit of untapped potential. It just felt like there was all this buildup, all of this really, really interesting discussion, and then it wasn't quite as developed at the end as I would have liked, but I do think that it is well worth the read. I really found it so interesting, and I'm very interested to see what this author does in the future, and I would love to see this idea taken on again, or more of it. So next up, kind of our literary stuff. I will get the nonfiction out of the way first. I read Playing in the Dark by Toni Morrison. This is less than 100 pages. It is just 3 kind of essays, or I'm not sure if they were originally speeches, but 3 essays about so the subtitle is Whiteness and the Literary Imagination. So these 3 are kind of all different variations on the use of race, of whiteness, of white characters and black characters throughout American literature, how we view anything written by white people as not about race, and anything written by black people as about race, and completely overlooking all of the nuances in how white literature throughout history has dealt with race, even when they're not saying that they're dealing with race. Very, very, very interesting. Highly recommend. I wish that I had read more American literature in order to know more of what she was talking about, because, you know, she's talking about Ernest Hemingway, the Moby Dick guy whose name I cannot remember, and a bunch of authors that honestly I have not read from. But still, obviously something that is very interesting to read about, hear about, and, you know, kind of apply moving forward to things that I do read. Then I read Like a Mule Bringing Ice Cream to the Sun by Sarah Ladipo Manika. This is a very short novel about an elderly Nigerian woman living in San Francisco, and kind of her just day-to-day life. You know, you're following her through a short period of time, and she's talking about her life experiences that she's had and the life experiences that she's continuing to have, you know, the people that she bumps into on a daily basis. It was very, very good. It is funny at times, sad at times, very clever. I liked this book a lot. I think I will think of it occasionally, you know, just kind of remembering the vividness of the characters and the kind of experience of reading it. I'm not like a favorite book of all time, but I really enjoyed it. Then I read The Bitch by Pilar Quintana, and this is a Colombian author, or the book is set in Colombia. I did not read this in Spanish. I read it thinking that I might at some point read it in Spanish, but I didn't dislike it at all, but I didn't feel compelled to read it again. It's again a very, very short book, and it tells the story of a woman living in a very, very brutal nature part of Colombia. I think it's the Pacific coast or something like that. And so it's like a just very, very difficult place to live. And she adopts a dog. And it's kind of talking about her life with her husband after adopting this dog, and the unraveling of certain parts of her life and some things that had kind of already unraveled, and, you know, hearing that story. You know, a book about a dog sounds like it would be like cute or something, you know, very much not what this book is. I mean, I guess you could guess by the title. A very sad book, well written, well, or well translated, whatever. But again, I don't think it will stick with me. Like, I don't think that I got it to the point that it would be memorable for me. Like, there are definitely themes and stuff that I got, but yeah, it was okay. I read Cursed Bread, which is the brand new book by Sophie Mackintosh, who is the author of one of my favorite books of all time, The Water Cure. This is her third book. The second book, called Blue Ticket, I thought was just okay. This one is somewhere in between, and all three of these books are actually quite different. Like, The Water Cure is a very, very abstract discussion of like extremist ideology, abuse, the nuclear family, all kinds of societal things. Blue Ticket is a very, very similar story to The Handmaid's Tale, to be honest. So kind of a dystopian sociological study. And then Cursed Bread is completely different. This was like I almost want to say delusional. Like, it was like you were in not a fever dream, but like a twilight zone of this village, seeming like quite some time ago, where this woman is completely enamored by this couple that moves to the village. She kind of becomes obsessed with their lives, and so you are following kind of different threads of this as this obsession continues throughout the town, and as she becomes more embroiled in their lives or them in hers. And it was so incredibly written. There were so many lines from this. Let me see if I think I saved them. Here's a sample. Sometimes, not very often, I find myself tied around the throat with a hot thread of panic at the inevitability of the days. Sample 2. You never asked me what it was like to spend my life listening as other people spoke. You never asked what it was like to hold these words inside me, to decide what to share, what to insinuate, but mainly what to keep for myself. The writing in this was incredible, and it was totally, for me, a no plot, just vibes book. I mean, there was a plot, but this was read for the experience for sure, and I really, really enjoyed it. Not like an important book to me like this is, but thoroughly enjoyable. Okay, transitioning into our Spanish books. I finished La Casa de los Espíritus, which is The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. Loved this book. Absolutely 100% loved this book. This book is about everything. I said on Instagram, this has set the standard for me on multi-generational, all-encompassing epics. Like, can someone please invent a battery that alerts you more than 3 seconds before it actually dies? Okay, so you're following the Del Valles, and then, that kind of family line continues. It is so hard to talk about this book because it is about everything. So this is set in Chile. It never says that it's set in Chile, but it is. And it's telling a very long build up to historical events in Chile. Again, I don't want to say what this is about because I think you just need to experience it. But this is about everything under the sun. It's about, family, politics, lots actually about politics, much more than I expected, which I loved. Evil, truly, I'm not sure I've ever wanted to rip a character from limb to limb quite as badly as I did in this book. Destiny, choices and consequences, and the rich, the poor, just everything. And the writing is so, so beautiful, and I do think that it's a very unique writing style, and I can see why some people maybe wouldn't like it, because I hear people all the time talk about, telling, not showing and stuff. And this is a very telling book. Like, she is telling you a story 100%, but she tells it so well. Like, oh, it's just so good. It is heartbreaking, but also quite funny at times. Like, she just will pop in the most random, outlandish thing that is just so funny. And yeah, so this started an obsession. This was my first Isabel Allende, and I will read all of them. Like, she immediately went onto my list to read all of her works. So, another read was La ridicula idea de no poder verte by Rosa Montero. Unfortunately, I do not think that this has been translated into English, but this is kind of an adaptation-ish of the diary of Marie Curie for about a year after the death of her husband. It is essentially an essay collection, although, I don't know. It tells the story of Marie Curie's life, but it also tells kind of the story of Rosa Montero's life. So she is a very well-known journalist and author from Spain, and her husband also died, and so that's why she was, essentially chosen by this publisher to tell this story. And so it's about grief, it's about art and writing and how people work through their lives and their grief. It's about, science and sexism and society, the way that women are valued or not valued, the experiences of Marie Curie throughout her life. There were some chapters in here that I just felt like it was such a privilege to be able to read. And then there were other chapters that I was not nearly as compelled by. This does feel a little bit out of step. It was written in like 2013 or something like that, so it's not like it's old, but there were things that she wrote that just feel a little outdated in kind of her brand of feminism, I guess. I don't know. It was like she was drawing conclusions about Marie Curie's life from things that felt almost kind of stereotyping. And those were the parts that I just was like, you just didn't have to do that. Like, you could have stuck to your strengths, stuck to what was so good about this book. But yeah, I do think if you read it in Spanish, this is well worth the read. Regardless, there were a lot of chapters that were very, very moving to me. I listened to La Cara Norte del Corazón, which has been translated into English. It is The North Face of the Heart by Dolores Redondo. And this is a crime novel, basically. So this is a prequel to a very, very famous trilogy. The trilogy is set in Basque Country, I believe, in Spain, but this book is actually set in the US. And it is following a young detective through kind of a trip to the US for like an FBI training that turns into trying to catch a serial killer in Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina. And this was a very, very interesting book. I really, really enjoyed listening to it. As has been the issue, I believe, with all of Dolores Redondo's books that I've read so far, it did feel overly long to me. Like, all of her audiobooks are like 22, 24 hours long, and you just need a lot of story to fill up an audiobook like that, and I'm not sure that she always has it. But nonetheless, I did really enjoy this. It had a lot of really interesting discussion about the hurricane and the complete failure of the US government and all of the agencies that should have responded to it. Something that was kind of annoying about this book was that it was very much the 20-something bright-eyed young agent comes in and figures out all these things that all of these seasoned FBI agents didn't figure out and stuff. And it's not that I have so much faith in seasoned FBI agents, but it just is kind of like, I don't know that that is how that always works, you know? So that was kind of a little bit like overdone in my opinion, but you know, it was still an enjoyable read. Then kind of transitioning into YA, I read La Flor y la Muerte, and this has also not been translated into English, but this is again a YA, kind of an older YA, maybe like 14 and up, science fiction book. So in this world, Olympus is a company, like a corporation, and so there are the 12, they're called like services or branches or whatever for the 12 gods, and so they each have their own kind of role in the company or in society, because the company does seem to run everything. They do kind of a big competition to determine who are going to be the leaders of each service in the future, basically, from what I understand. And so we're following some young people through that competition, and they kind of discover things about the world that they live in, the corporation, and themselves, obviously. I really enjoyed this book. This also was too long. It was like 18 hours audiobook. I read this and listened to it at the same time. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed this. It is a series and I will be continuing. I initially tried to just listen to this as an audiobook and I was lost. There's a lot of characters, and they call each other by both their names and their service. And so I had no idea what was happening at any time. I also know nothing about the Greek gods. This is by the same authors as Ansin Filtros, which was a book that I was ultimately disappointed by, but I loved the representation in that book, and this has kind of the same, not quite as much, but kind of the same levels of representation for LGBTQIA+, and had a plot to go along with it. So I really enjoyed this book. Then our last book and our last YA, I read Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. This was all over Instagram, and so I pretty much impulse picked it up at Target. I am trying to branch out of my comfort zone, try things in different genres that I don't normally read, and this is a YA romance, which is pretty much the definition of things that I don't normally read. And I don't not read romance for like snobbery reasons. I always feel bad when I say that because I don't like when people hate on romance as a genre. I don't read it because it makes my insides want to crawl out of my body. So like, that's why I can't deal with it. It's so awkward. But this was really cute. I did want more plot because, you know, I'm not that into romance, but so cute. So you're following two teenagers who are growing up in the UK, and they are kind of going for the same scholarship. They used to be best friends for their whole childhood, but then they had a falling out, and then now they are like enemies. And so they have to hang out together because they're going out for this same scholarship, and, you know, we all know how that's gonna go. And the back and forth in this was amazing. It was so funny, but at the same time not like so clever that you were like, teenagers do not talk like this. Like, obviously teenagers probably don't really talk like this, but it wasn't out of the realm of possibility, like, for, you know, smart teenagers to be talking like this. It was perfect levels of awkward without being, you know, you want to die on the inside. Funny, endearing. They were like actually likable human beings with understandable struggles and communication, and yeah, very good. Highly recommend. That is everything. I do want to talk about how I read the books that I'm reading in my wrap-ups, so we're just going to quickly do that. I did take kind of my French books out of consideration for my unread shelf project last month because I am not actively reading them right now, so it kind of didn't make sense to have them in there. So at the end of April, my unread shelf number is at 31. Sorry that this light is losing its mind. So I read 3 books from NetGalley. I owned 5 books. I got 2 from the library and 2 from the app that I have a subscription to called Storytel. So I hope that you had a good reading month, and if you want to let me know any of your favorites or least favorites, definitely do so, and I will see you in the next video.